Tesler-Mabe, and I am a musician and songwriter, and I love teaching whenever I can, and I'm happy to be here at Guitareo. And just wanted to thank you for clicking on this video. I'm excited to teach you about just the concept of improvising freely, the way I sort of figured out works for me, and I don't think I'm the only one who approaches improvising on the guitar this way, but it's worked really well for me and just the way I conceptualize the instrument. And I think one thing that really sort of helped me understand the guitar a lot better was realizing that it's kind of an instrument made of intervals more than anything else. Obviously, it's important to know what notes are in a scale and like which notes are sharp, which notes are flat, all of that. It's important, and that comes with time. To me, it all kind of comes down to the minor pentatonic scale. And I think you could also create an entire career solely using that scale, as many people have, you know. Like, that's all the minor pentatonic scale. That's just 5 notes. So when it comes to the minor pentatonic scale, we're just gonna have to take a step back and look at the major scale first and realize, you know, what intervals make up the major scale. And then with that, we can figure out what intervals make up the minor pentatonic scale. And then you'll see why that's important if you continue watching this lesson. And so if we look at the major scale, let's say we're in the key of A, all of the intervals are pretty straightforward. It's just 1, and then this note is a major second away from the root. This note is a major third away from the root. This note is a 4th away, 5th, 6th, major 7, and then the root again. So those are all the intervals that make up a major scale. So if we just imagine we have like the shadowy outline of a major scale just here on the guitar, we can figure out what intervals are in the minor pentatonic scale. So the minor pentatonic scale, the next note is right there. And so maybe if you have done some ear training, you might know that's a minor third. But if not, you can just look at the major scale and realize that's where the major third is. But we're playing that note right there, which is, you know, flattened. So it's the minor third. And the next note is the 4th. And then the next note of the minor pentatonic scale, it's the 5th. Now this note is not in the major scale, so let's figure out what it is. The major scale sounds like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, major 7. But we just played that note there. And if you take a major 7 and you flatten it, you're actually playing a dominant 7, flat 7. And so those are the notes that make up the minor pentatonic scale. It's penta meaning 5, so there are only 5 notes. And now we know it's the root, minor third, 4, 5, flat 7, dominant 7, and then the root again. I should also point out there's a fun way you can extend it. Once you get to the G string here, you can slide up to the 9th fret, and then with your first finger, play the 8th fret of the B string, and then the 10th fret of the B string, and then 8th fret of the E string, and the 10th fret of the E string. So then, with that extension, you also have access to the notes up here too, which can be helpful when you're improvising. So, this brings me to my next point. Knowing this scale inside and out, it can act as your anchor, you know, whenever you're improvising. If you're in the tonal center of A, you have this scale, and you can always come back to that scale, and you know what intervals make it up, you know where everything is, and I think getting that really seared into your brain can be really helpful, because once you know, just like second nature, where all of these notes are, like you can find the dominant 7 anywhere in the scale, or the minor third, or the root, then it makes it so easy to apply all of the other color notes that can make your improvising so interesting. So you're improvising, you can throw in the major third instead of the minor third, and you can throw in stuff like the 9 or the 2nd. And, you know, like the sharp 4, like in the blues scale. So that is where you can start adding colors and, like I said, your playing more interesting. So now maybe you're asking yourself, how do you know which colors to throw in? And that's what I'll tell you. What you don't, I know a lot of you probably don't want to hear this, but this is where the modes become important. And I also want to take a quick second to say that, yes, theory is important in terms of understanding music and realizing and figuring out why the music you think sounds good. But ultimately, it's just there to sort of help you figure out what works and what doesn't and why that is. But ultimately, if it sounds good, it sounds good. And I think, for me, a trap I fell into when I was younger is I always assumed that even if what I was playing I thought sounded good, if I didn't understand why it worked, it didn't count and it wasn't valid. But that is not true. Ultimately, it needs, it's more important if it sounds good. And a lot of the time, too, with theory, it might, in theory, be correct, but it might not actually sound appropriate to the music, or worse than that, it might just sound boring and uninteresting, and it might take sort of exploring with your ear to find what really elevates your playing and takes it to unpredictable and interesting places. But anyways, I think the theory can help you if you're sort of stuck and not sure where to go next with your ear, sort of figure out where to go. And so, with the modes. So I don't want to go too in-depth into the modes because that's obviously not what this video is about, but I basically just want to make very clear this idea of, scale formulas and what makes up a scale and like the intervals in them. And seeing a scale like the Mixolydian mode, you might not know, it's exactly the same as the major scale, except instead of playing a major 7, you have a dominant 7. So that's all it is. But the reason I think it's important to mention is because if you were to put the minor pentatonic scale and the Mixolydian scale side by side, you'd realize they're exactly the same, except the Mixolydian scale also has a major 3rd and the 2nd that the minor pentatonic scale doesn't have. So basically, all this means is you can be playing your usual minor pentatonic licks and then throw in the, the major 3rd and the 2nd and all of that, and then suddenly it sounds like you're throwing in flavors of, the Mixolydian mode. And, the same thing with like Dorian, which is exactly the same as Mixolydian, except you also now have a minor 3rd. So basically the scale formula, and it's okay if you don't get this right now, because there are other great videos online about the modes and what they can do. But it's just, 1, 2, minor 3rd, 4, 5, 6, dominant 7. And so again, the only thing that separates Dorian from minor pentatonic scale is the addition of that note right there, the 2nd or the 9. So then you can throw in these really cool flavors in your playing. Stuff like that. And then Santana loves that scale. It's a great color to add into your playing, and you can just play your normal sort of licks again and just throw in all these other flavors. Or like in Lydian, having the sharp 4 in there. And so basically my point is, it's all about the intervals and the colors, and it's, if this sort of approach to improvising makes sense to you, it's definitely worth, checking out other scales and trying to break them down in a way that allows you to seamlessly integrate it into your playing. And then knowing that you always have the minor pentatonic scale to fall back on as your guide, as your anchor. And there we go. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much. I hope that made sense to at least one person out there. Have a wonderful day.